jump straight in. My main point this morning is around the way the game is played, and I reckon the flood is back.
The flood's back.
The flood's back. It used to be a term, a derogatory term around protecting your back half and just parking the bus and not allowing the opposition to score, but the flood is back. And I think the Geelong-Carlton game showed it more than any other. And potentially, I think it's the teams that are doing this are actually the teams that are giving themselves the best chance to contend. I think he's got more than one arrow in his quiver. There's no doubt that Geelong have always been a defence-first side. So at stoppage, they'll always set up with an extra number. And we saw time and time again, if it was in a fast turnover or in a stoppage loss, Geelong always had an extra number around either Harry Mackay or Charlie Curnow. Now, sometimes that was defender, sometimes it was a winger, like Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah.
We talk about players given a licence to go wherever they like. Traditionally, every team has a player who goes behind the ball if they want to hold up. And this might be a phase. You see a red sign or something and it'll go, okay, last 2 minutes of a quarter or when the opposition's kicked 3 goals. I reckon Jeremy Cameron just does it
whenever he likes.
He feels it, yeah.
It looked like that on Saturday.
And he from a wing, he gets all the way back and he doesn't keep his width as a wingman, just sliding. He just goes into the hole. And when you've got that capacity, that capability, and you've got the experienced players that can action it, it just means that you're always supporting your back six. Wingers have always done it, but if you've got a forward that goes and does it, and then you've got a ruckman that gets behind and goes and does it, already you've got 9, 10 bodies. Yeah, they're not setting up for starting their offense. They're still a very high pressure, at-ball pressure side, Geelong, but they're joining Sydney, they're joining GWS, and Melbourne are probably the other ones, Fremantle are the other ones, who don't need to win the inside 50 count by huge numbers to have a significant gap in the scoring.
So explain to me and explain to the average footy fan out there who's going, okay, well, that's fine. We've got our numbers in the defensive 50 and we are flooding. You're essentially saying Geelong are flooding. Then wouldn't logic suggest that when you win the ball back in your back half, you are kicking it to all the opposition's extra numbers who should be set up with their spares? How is it that Geelong can transition the ball through the numbers that they've got in their back half to score as efficiently as they did when Carlton should have the extra numbers? Because that's just what logic suggests.
Yeah, but you said kicking as a choice of possession or disposal with that, and that's not what Geelong are doing. Geelong are running the ball out, and GWS run the ball out, and Collingwood, which is why they will be in the mix for a long time because of the way they set up the ground. They set up the ground to protect their defence, and they're one of the best teams when they're going end to end and scoring from the back.
So it's about running the ball with your numbers, link up, handball, forward handball change, and then you're out, and then you're kicking it to an open forward.
Richmond were dominant in the competition for 4 or 5 years there. A period they always had an extra number. They always had Grimes, Vlosten as an extra who supported their back half. And they had wingmen that would work all the way back and then all the way forward. And when we talked to Zach Tui after 8, I'll ask him about, because he ended up kicking 3 goals off the wing, sliding really hard forward. So this is a hard, high work rate game of footy that Geelong are playing. So they had 45 insides to 66. So 45 insides to score 18 goals, and they did something similar against Adelaide 3 or 4 weeks back. But they're averaging. They've got the same number of inside 50s as their opposition across the season to date, but they're plus 180 points for that time. We've got Sydney, who are only plus 4 inside 50s as an average against their direct opposition, but they're plus 230 points. So what you're seeing here, and GWS are probably at the high end, they're plus 6. So their inside differential is a lot better, but they're plus 200 points. So the sides that we're looking at are the sides that defend their back third really well because they've got the work rate to get numbers behind, but then they've got the ability to work the ball with numbers through the opposition's midfield and then to score really well when they go inside 50. So the sides that are doing it the best, Sydney, Geelong, GWS, Melbourne to a certain extent, but they're a little more dour. They get back to support, but they're probably not scoring as well the other way, but they're protecting really well. The question will be is does stoppage matter? Does clearances and contested ball, does it make the big difference in today's footy? Because the jury suggests that, or the evidence suggests that maybe it's not as important as it was in yesteryear.
This time last week, we had a discussion around Geelong, and you said they're doing everything that they can do. They're playing against who they're playing again, but who have they beaten? There's no buts now, Bucks. We at least agree on that?
No, they stood up really well. Carlton could have won that game, and it was a high quality game. Carlton's best players played really well. Geelong's structure, there are no buts. Set up.
There are no buts. On Geelong.
But it's round 7.
Gee, you're stubborn. All right, let's move on.
But it's round 7.
Let's move on.
The flip side of that is Carlton and their midfield. We've spoken about Pettitt early and how he's came in and made a significant difference. Cripps is playing as good a footy as we've seen, and Sam Walsh has come into the fold. They're going to worry a lot with that midfield, and Vossi wasn't happy, but they're still doing a fair bit right. I wanted to single out one of Vossi's players, and didn't play a lot early, but Sam Walsh has come in the last 3 weeks. I was actually asked after his first game on Fox, if you had a choice, you had to take one player for 5 years, and I'll ask you this one now. Sam Walsh or Connor Rozee, who are you taking for the next 5 years?
Oh, it varies. If you asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have said Rozee.
Well, that was off the back of Rosee's first half where he had 20 touches
in the Essendon game. Now he's done a hammy. He's been missing for 3 weeks, and Walsh has come in and done what he has done. I think it's line ball. It depends what you want. If you want reliable, consistent, hardworking, unbelievable leader, you go with Walsh. If you want a bit of brilliance and a bit of star power and a bit of X factor and a bit of match winning ability and probably more craft around the goals, you go Rozee. So
I said Rozee at the time because I wasn't sure about Sam Walsh's availability, or whether he was going to, what's going on with his back and how that's going to transpire. But watching him the last 3 weeks, he's averaging 33 touches, and that's not the be-all and end-all. He's averaging 8 tackles. He's averaging 6 clearances, 13 contested possessions. But for me, it is his no-nonsense, turns up every moment of the game that he is involved, he is invested in it, he makes an impact. I get the sense, and we saw this late last year with his performances in finals, the bigger the games get, the more impactful he will become. Now, he's played really good footy now, just jumped straight back in and has not missed a beat. He's always there. He's the third bloke at every one-on-one. He's the fifth bloke at a 2-on-2. He outnumbers as hard as any. I think his kicking is effective. He's not a scalpel with it, but his kicking is really effective. But his ability to be the extra number at the contest, whether it's defensive to stick a tackle and pressure, or whether it's to win the ball. I'm really going to enjoy watching this bloke play, and I reckon the longer seasons go in terms of getting deep towards finals, or games 8-point games that need to be won in August, or games in September. I think he's going to separate himself as he goes along.
You can have your say on that. 0433 98 11 16. What are you making of the Lions and their coach?
Yeah, well, really interesting. I heard with interest your comments about Chris Fagan's post-match presser, and I think I recognise where he's at.
Where's that?
The work that he's done with the group, the commitment that he's shown to this group, the success that they have had without having the ultimate. They have had success. But let's just remind ourselves about a couple of those comments, and then we'll come back. It's a really, the conversations that will take place in the four walls at Brisbane, probably would have been taking place the last couple of weeks, but this week in particular, going forward, that Chris Fagan is a coach who's put himself at the same level of his senior players, and he's put his trust and faith with them. And
is that the right move?
I think it largely has been. You can't criticise what they've been able to achieve.
What's the alternative to not put yourself in with the players?
I think that old school coaching was the coach stayed above and told players what to do, like discipline them heavily, would
give me an example.
Would test strips off them if they talk about effort. If their effort wasn't there, I think that's still. I just reckon listen to Barassi way back when, and I think that and Lee Matthews is probably a guy that stayed above, but would always stayed above his players, but still treated them like men. I think when sometimes old school, you stay above your players, it's nearly like it's a contest, it's a hierarchy. I think the modern coaching has come a little bit more to trust and have faith and to walk with some of you, with your senior players and your senior core and your locker room a little bit more than you would have done in yesteryear. And I think Fags has done that effectively well. I think that's the type of man manager that he naturally was and has become.
Is there a but coming?
Well, the but is, what do you do now? So when your players aren't giving you the necessary effort, short of, you look them in the eye and you've, for the last 5 years, you've gone, here's the evidence. We need a better effort, whether it's Josh Dunkley or whether it's Lockie Neal or whether it's Harris Andrews. And they've responded to that for 5 years, but eventually that message wears thin. And there's got to be repercussions. So there's got to be selection repercussions. Chris Fagan has to separate himself in some shape or form from this tight connection that he has with his existing leaders, so that and he's got to change his language to stop talking about what they've done in the last 5 years and to start worrying about what they're doing right now.
So are you suggesting he's under pressure? Because 8 games ago or whatever it was, they lose a grand final by under a kick. And now we're 8 games. It's only 8 games, and we're starting to say, is this a guy under pressure?
Well, 2 games ago, don't worry about 8 games ago, 2 games ago, Brisbane took on Melbourne on the MCG and looked amazing. But when you get fluctuations in effort like that, and it's effort and energy. When you get fluctuations in effort and energy from the same group in such a short space of time, how do you challenge that? You've got to sharpen the saw. There's got to be some repercussions in some shape or form. And Fags has always been a guy who goes back and trusts his players, who gives the faith to his players. And I understand that. I admire that. And I think that has been a large part of their success. So to try now, or to have to now make a different decision and look differently at it is a challenge.
Bucks, it's your turn this week.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go from further away, from the start of the round to the end. So Andy McGrath, I thought, in the Anzac Day clash was fantastic. Like, Merritt got the award, and I thought that was well deserved. But I just loved Andy McGrath's game and the way that he's begun the season. So I think he's been first class. Can't go past Jeremy Cameron, 5 goals, getting up the ground, and we'll talk about that a little bit longer. I want to put another guy in from there, Mark Pettitt.
Oh,
he's a bit of a I think when coaches talk about making the teammates around you better, like to make Paddy Cripps and Sam Walsh better, you're doing your role pretty well. And I think he's elevating some of the Carlton's best players.
He may have played his best 2 games in a row of his career in the last 2 weeks.
We forget real quick where Carlton began in 2022. And we were talking about the stoppage beasts that they'd become. They were scoring from centre bounce. Like, that was the last time that he was up and healthy. So let's not forget that Carlton have got that. They lost their stoppage game, started focusing more on turnover. But we've seen now when Pitnet's on the field, the stoppage game goes again. So he was fantastic. Caleb Sarong just kept going. Had ably assisted by the old warhorse, Nat Fyfe, who turned back the clock.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, for Sarong, I mean, it's a club record, 17 clearances. And so there's some players out there, and I'm interested in your thoughts, 0433 98 11 16. Unconditional effort, regardless of how the game's going, how their own form is going, that you can never, ever question effort. And for a little guy, he's someone that I admire. It was rap that he was All-Australian last year because he was so consistent, but he's just unconditional, and he's a teammate you'd love to play alongside of.
Absolutely. Love the way he goes about it, and his work rate's through the roof. The 5th guy, I've got Noah Anderson. He's probably, spoke about after the game being tagged the week before, hadn't had that close checking run with against him and learned a lot about that. He's not going to face that often, but I suppose when if you haven't faced it much, it is a shock to the system when you've been able to run around sort of in between, sort of turnover and transition, find your 30, have your 6, 8, 7, 8 tackles.
Well, just his numbers yesterday, Bucks. Like, this is triple-double sort of stuff if you follow the NBA. He's had 33, he's had 12 clearances, 11 inside 50s, he's kicked 2 goals, 9 score involvements. Number 1 ranked player on the ground by a mile. But they destroyed them from stoppage yesterday, Gold Coast. And no Harley Reid, young player, I understand that, but that was where the game was won for them yesterday.
Jared Witt's probably a bit stiff not being included in our 6. And the final one's Nick Blakey. There's so many of the Swans players that find the ball, that use it really well by hand and foot, in particular by foot. And Nick Blakey just breaks the game open. And, we had Wally sort of ringing about Geelong's and Sydney's ability to transition from back half to score. And Nick Blakey's a big reason why the Swans have been able to do that consistently.
There you go. 6 of the best performances from the weekend.